It's got to be refreshing as hell for people in London. I mean, hey, I'm on the other side of the world, and it's refreshing as hell. For me, it gives me hope because I know you. I know you have such a great heart, a great soul. You are guided in a way where you want to serve the people.
Sometimes that independent candidate has to come in and say, wait a second, I know how to build these houses. We do it here. Wait a second, I know how to solve crime. We're going to get corporates to make donations directly to our community centers. Wait a second. This is all, it's not actual rocket science, but sometimes you need someone without a vested interest to do it. I don't have to check with anyone before I talk about my ideas. That's the beautiful thing. I don't have to check with people before I say something. And again, I look at the current mayor and it feels like everything is like a composed press release. And I think people see through that stuff. I go out on my digital battle bus and I live stream for like an hour and 20 minutes. It's crazy. And I just answer questions and I talk. I'm doing vlogs every night. I'm just like, I'm real. And I don't think anyone else would dream of going live because it would potentially be bad, right? They would say something wrong. How can I say something wrong if I'm being genuine about my intentions for this city?
Brian, how are you, brother?
I'm great, man. How are you?
Man, I'm delusional, happy, and hopefully on purpose. So life is treating me pretty good.
That's awesome, man. Look, I haven't done too many of these IG lives, but I'm starting to like them, the ones that I've done. So first of all, thanks for being here, man. Really appreciate it. You're in Austin, right?
I'm in Austin. Yeah,
You
I've been
guys are,
traveling all over, but yeah, home base is here in Austin.
okay, nice stuff. Well, for people that don't know you, you have this incredible YouTube channel that's blowing up, and you use, what is it? Satire, comedy to make points that maybe can't be made sometimes seriously. Maybe I'm probably getting this right or wrong. I don't know. But you do it in an incredible way. And you had me on your show for actually your podcast about 7 months ago talking about freedom of speech. And it really appreciate you having me on. And it was great talking about that stuff. So thanks for doing what you do. I appreciate it.
Well, heck yeah, brother, man, and thank you for inspiring me. I mean, you last year, probably about this time, you were leading the charge against censorship, standing for free speech, and that was inspiring me. And then the censors came after me, so I got right into the arena. And just sharing briefly, you mentioned that I share what's going on through satire. One of the things that I have going for me is the AI that's looking for all the right things to censor, which is just about anything with any degree of meaning anymore. When the AI looks at what I'm saying, usually it looks at it like, okay, this guy's just towing the narrative as
Right.
he's supposed to. But of
Right.
course, because I'm saying it with sarcasm and satire, it's delivering the opposite perspective. So amongst the other challenges out there right now, that's something going for the movement that I know we're both on together.
Yeah, it's true. And we really resonate in so many ways about the things that we're talking about. And it's funny, I guess they need an AI to understand satire. But I think it's going to be hard to get an AI that can understand JP Sears anytime soon.
Yeah, I think so. If they do understand me, I'm probably not doing my job well enough as a comedian.
Yeah, no, that's probably true. Well, yeah, you're doing a great job, man, and I really appreciate it. And I think it was 7 months ago we had our conversation. I was just
Yeah, man,
checking.
it's got to be right about then. And yeah, and I've had so much feedback from that. Even still, people just loving it. I mean, you've just been so inspirational, and now you're crazy enough. You are right in the thick of the race for mayor of London,
It's
and
true.
you've gone all in on that, which
Yeah,
I've just been so excited about. And I'm curious how, I know you faced adversity in that for sure, unfairly. How are you doing right now with the whole mayoral race?
yeah, it's a great question. And look, it's fun to actually talk to someone about this because I've been kind of solo casting for the last 4 or 5 months, just honestly trying to get out my policies and my ideas to fix what's wrong with London. So I haven't really been able to have, like, honestly, a frank conversation like this. So this is kind of good. It's a little therapeutic having you here as well. And so when we spoke 7 months ago, I hadn't yet announced that I was going to run for mayor, and it was just bouncing in the back of my head. I was looking at the landscape here in London. I was looking at the current mayor, and his supposed opponent with the two-party system of what they roll out as your two choices. This illusion of choice. And I said, you must be joking. And we were in the middle of this lockdown with nobody giving us solutions or innovations or no way forward. And I thought, I've lived here 20 years. I got two little boys, 3 and 4 years old, and I just kept thinking, what are they going to say? What did you do, Daddy, back in 2021? Did you make more videos on YouTube, or did you actually step up and do something about it? And I just thought, this city's given me so much. When I got here, I was kind of a broken man. I just come from New York City. I'd gone through all my struggles with addiction and failure, and this city gave me everything. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to run for mayor. And I was lucky to have a really good group with me and my team, and they were all in, and we just decided to do it in a way no one's ever run for mayor. So I used all my digital platforms to speak honestly and in a live stream, digital, transparent way to everyone on the streets. I go out and talk to people on the streets. I film videos with people on the streets, and we just went all in. And I don't think anyone ever saw someone do something like that. And with our YouTube channel, it really helped because already 1.7 million Londoners knew who I was before we started. That's out of 9 million. And it's been a real edge. And I get kids in the street that know that I'm running for mayor, the kids that probably normally wouldn't engage with politics. So it's been a crazy journey. I won't lie to you, JP. It's been absolutely intense. And but also when it comes to freedom of speech, we went all in on that last year. I put everything on the line. And I thought to myself, being the mayor of London, fighting against censorship, I can do so much more. So it's like there's so much more we can do with this position. And the odds makers, the bookies, there's actually people that make books in the mayoral race. They've had us in second place for the last 4 months ahead of the conservative candidate. Here, they've got Labor and conservative. It's kind of like the Democrats and Republicans kind of. And as an independent candidate, we've been in second place in the bookies for 4 months. And so it shocks everybody. No one knows what to do with us, to be honest. But maybe that's good. And we're really shaking it up. We're getting a lot of people excited about politics for the first time. And it's been really interesting, to say the least.
Well, it's got to be refreshing as hell for people in London. I mean, hey, I'm on the other side of the world, and it's refreshing as hell. For me, it gives me hope because I know you have such a great heart, a great soul. You are guided in a way where you want to serve the people, not have the people serve you, which we've obviously seen way too much of in the past year with people in the position of power. So I just can only imagine what it means for people in London to have not just the guy saying the right things, but a guy who wants to help them regain their freedoms and have a great life. And I know there's so much crime over there now, knife crime, and nothing being done about that with the current mayoral administration. And I know, Brian, I know you've had, it kind of looks like some intentional sabotage, maybe conspiracies against you. I mean, I've seen the cops have shut your campaign down. I think they even arrested you. And it just strikes me as very Russian, kind of like Putin having his main political rival arrested. I mean, how the hell does that happen?
It's a great question, and so just for people that don't know the incident you're talking about, I think it was January 29th of this year. I was out on our digital battle bus. By the way, it's kind of a UK thing, maybe not an American thing, but basically we have this massive bus with my name and picture on the side of it. And it's not really a bus, it's actually a mobile broadcasting studio in the back. And I drive it around London. I've driven it over 3,000 miles in the city of London through 32 of our boroughs here, which are like these small sections of the thing. And I'm trying to see everybody possible. And so we had kitted this thing out. And again, this is way before anyone else announced for mayor. We've been campaigning for almost 6 months. Most people campaign for a month for mayor. They just, that's just what they do. But for us, we were taking this super seriously. We knew we had to get out there and talk about these issues. So I think it was the third day. I was walking down the middle of the street with my bus parked next to me, and I was filming a vlog in the middle of the street. It just started snowing actually in London. And I was talking to my phone alone in the middle of the street. I was suddenly surrounded by 10 police officers. They came in 5 police vans, and they detained me and my crew. They fined us and they banned us from campaigning. Literally, they said, you're not allowed to campaign. And luckily, one of my video guys shot the whole thing. And so we had the whole video of it. And first when they said that, I said, you're banning me from campaigning? Like, that sounds really strange. And I was like, everything we're doing is completely COVID secure. And JP, the funny thing is that Apple TV was filming a series right down the road near Buckingham Palace at the same time. And we were using the same COVID protocols that Apple TV was using for their film production. So, you know, they have it where it's everyone set up, where everyone wears masks, and they take their masks off and they film. And so we were using the same protocols. And again, I was in the middle of the street alone, and the police stopped me and they said, you're breaking the law. And we clearly weren't. And so again, I said to the police officer, I said, this seems very political, is what I said to him. And he got really mad and he yelled. He said, this is not political. And again, I know the police have a difficult job. For me, it just felt like someone else was telling them what to do. And so they fined 5 members of my crew and me. They told us to go home and to stop campaigning. We obviously weren't very impressed with that. I went back, sat down with my legal team. We drafted a 4-page letter, sent it to all the commissioners, and then we got back out on the road the next day. And we got pulled over by the Metropolitan Police, a separate police force here in London, and then we got followed by the police. But after that, they didn't actually stop us. And we kept live streaming from the back of the bus, going through every single borough, asking people what their problems were, reading out questions in real time, something a politician would normally never do. We kept going. And so yeah, I mean, it's honestly, JP, it's been a continuation of our fight for freedom of speech. At that moment in January and February, even now, we're fighting for democracy, which is something I never thought I'd have to do in one of the countries where it was created, you know, and yet I'm still doing it. And I'm still doing it today. I mean, free and fair elections, funny things like, you know, the way you leaflet, the way you drop things off at people's doorsteps, the way you talk to people on the streets, they all make it very hard for an independent candidate to get action. The BBC had a debate, JP, the other night, and they invited 2 candidates to the debate, even though I've been in second place in all of the major odds makers, all of them, and they didn't even invite me. And I was like, what's going on here? But there's certain regulations for the media here that only allows the parties with a certain market share of votes to actually be on there. So it almost self-perpetuates.
Well, certainly. I mean, the ridiculousness of that, you being a clear, you know, number 2 in the polls, that's kind of like in the Super Bowl, you know, the 2 teams that win the conference championships, like one of them doesn't get to play. Like, well, yeah, we've got another team we're bringing in, and of course,
it's a strange thing, yeah. And again, there's the polls, and then there's the odds makers. So, but the polls are a strange thing because again, they're this really old school thing where JP they literally call people up on their landline at home. Now, I haven't had a landline in about 5 years, so I don't know who these people are. And then people pick up the phone at night and talk to these people for 15 minutes while they ask them poll questions. So, again, I don't know anyone who actually does that. I think they call the same 5,000 people over and over again. You know, so the polls say one thing, but like the odds makers say another, and again, digital media says another. So it's a big question of who's right.
I'd imagine, man. And I'm curious here, and we're on social media. I know we can't speak freely, as much as I hate to say that. Yeah, I'll throw it your way, whatever you can or can't say on it. You've got a major election coming up here in a month. The democratic election process, there's already been some questions raised at you. You get stop campaigning, the police tell you. How's it looking as far as a free and fair election? Or is that just you have to go through it and see what happens?
Yeah, it's a great question. And again, I'll speak just as if we can speak freely, and hopefully this asset stays up. But Again, we were not impressed and very surprised that we got stopped by the police in January. We made a video about it that went viral, and a lot of people watched. We got some press coverage for it, and I think that's the only thing that kept the police from stopping us and from the political process from stopping us campaigning. We've pushed forward, but it's still very difficult. Like I said, it's hard to actually get media coverage because they're technically not even supposed to cover an independent candidate because I didn't actually rank in the polls on the last election because I wasn't running. So the whole thing is in a weird way almost stacked against an independent candidate. Even the mainstream media process, it's kind of in their interest to favor one of these two parties. These two parties, they run this illusion of choice on the citizens. Every 4 years or 5 years here, depending when they call elections, they give you a new choice. But a lot of times it's the same parties just signing off on failure. There's no innovation. There's no need to change. So like you mentioned, knife crime here, it's a shocking level. The fact that it even exists is probably surprising to you. There's knife crime in London? Like, I can't believe that's a thing. It is a thing. And someone gets stabbed on the streets here every few days. And I'm talking teenagers and kids in all over the city. And I've got kids. I reached out to Tim Kennedy about this because I know he teaches a lot of like knife defense courses and stuff. I know you guys are friends, and we had a great episode on London Real. And I really respect him. And when I'm mayor, I really want to get some help when it comes to understanding this problem. But it's also an issue of where are the police? What are we giving these kids to do after school? And so there's like real issues here we need to talk about. And I've spent the last few months just trying to discover those issues. But whether we'll actually have a free chance, I mean, I just have to move forward. For a while, because of COVID restrictions, literally, I can't do a live event right now. And we're restricted to the number of people we can talk to. Now, we've got great digital platforms, but you can't win a campaign digitally. So it's tricky. There's also the whole postal voting system. We think that'll be a small percentage, but we've invited people to postal vote and we've been able to send them out, but I don't know what happens there. So it's a very unique time. I've been calling for free and fair elections in exactly those terms you just used for 3 or 4 months. Honestly, after I got arrested, I said we should have the UN here to monitor the elections, just like they do in sometimes third world countries, because something doesn't seem right here. I had a Russian friend of mine here in London, you mentioned Russia, who grew up in Russia, then went to Canada. He lives here now. He's been on my show. And he said, Brian, this feels like Russia to me. He said, this feels a little like Russia. He said, give the people the minimum. They won't protest these rules that don't make a lot of sense. And so, yeah, all we can do, though, is still go forward. So everyone says, Brian, what do you think you can go up against the machine? You'll never have a chance. But I'm like, well, we have to do something. And so, some people are critical of my campaign or of our policies. But I'm like, I can't just sit back and do nothing. Because if I hadn't a run right now, there literally wouldn't be any other choice but these two candidates. And they're both, I watched this debate, quote unquote, the other night on BBC. At first I was insulted I wasn't invited. And then I watched these two jokers talk back and forth for 30 minutes. They actually have the same argument at the council every month anyways. They've both been in politics for their whole lives. They're these career politicians that are pretty much both responsible for the last 20 years of London politics. And I just looked at them and thinking, is that really the choice we have for potentially one of the greatest cities in the world? Like, it just makes me sad. So, we're here to shake it up. We've got a lot of support on the streets. I actually think we could be looking at the biggest political upset in British history on May 6th, because people know who I am, JP. A lot of people have followed me for 10 years. They've seen my movies. They've seen me have conversations with real people, and they really know who I am. But some people don't. And so it's been quite a process. And I've learned a lot, man. I've learned a lot about knife crime. I know how to build affordable housing now, something I knew nothing about 6 months ago. I know how to fix our transport system, something I knew nothing about 6 months ago. I've got some great ideas to kickstart the economy. Again, I think my ideas are 10 times better than the competition, but it's about getting the word out. So it's been fascinating. I'll have to write a book about this one day.
And yeah, well deserved. I know you're inspiring a lot of people, just even running, and the fact that you are running so successfully, and then we get to see what happens in May. I mean, it's just so exciting. And you mentioned you're running against career politicians. People are so smart nowadays. we're not fooled by BS. And, career politicians, I'm sure some have better intentions than others, but so many of them, they've never been in the business of helping people. They've been in the business of political gain and positioning of themselves, and then they see how they help people or not. But I mean, having an outsider come in, you've dedicated your life the past 10 years to helping people live better lives, build their businesses, grow. And that speaks for itself. And, I know one of the things that got Trump elected back in 2016 was the fact that he's an outsider. He's not a career politician. And that's another thing that, he got whatever it was, at least 75 million votes even in this past election. And I think, love Trump or not, the point is people are just so hungry for something that isn't BS, someone who actually cares rather than saying they care. So, man, I love it.
No, it's an interesting observation, and I think people are smarter than people think they are. They really get it. I think every now and then things need to be shaken up. And I was talking to this young man, I think his name was Sam Steele, out in a borough called Lewisham on Friday. And he came up to me and said, "Brian Rose, I've been watching your videos." And we started having a conversation about cars for some reason. And I said, look at what Elon Musk did with Tesla. He created an electric car. Now that didn't come from Ford and GM. That would have never come from a traditional auto company because they're happy with the status quo. They know how to make money and everything's fine. And I see that kind of with the two-party system sometimes. Like everything's okay. Everyone's still getting elected every now and then. They still have the games going. They still have these strange interests that just keep everything kind of similar. And then you bring in someone like a Musk and he says, guess what? I'm going to build this car. And everyone tries to go against him. They try to short sell his stock, right? And then he breaks through because he's just got better ideas. And then everyone else starts building electric cars. And so I'm not comparing myself to Elon Musk, but I'm just saying sometimes that independent candidate has to come in and say, wait a second, I know how to build these houses. We do it here. Wait a second, I know how to solve crime. We're going to get corporates to make donations directly to our community centers. Wait a second, this is all, it's not actual rocket science, but sometimes you need someone without a vested interest to do it. And the more I learn about politics, the more I don't like it, to be honest. And I'm sure people start with good intentions, but then it becomes this machine somehow. And you have a party. Like, I don't have to check with anyone before I talk about my ideas. That's the beautiful thing. I got no corporate donors. We just created our own party, by the way, the London Real Party. So we actually have a party, which just helps me on the ballot and places like that. It also means we're going to run some people for the assembly as well. And we can just be a little more serious about it. But I don't have to check with people before I say something. And again, I look at the current mayor and it feels like everything is like a composed press release. And I think people see through that stuff. I hope they do.
Man, even blind people see through that stuff. we had our new president over here just give the most interesting press conference he could possibly give. He's not even looking at reporters and calling on them. He's looking at a predetermined list. And then just spontaneously, he has the answer to their exact question already written down, from which he reads off of. And it's not meant to be a criticism towards Biden, though I feel critical towards him. But it's just meant to say, like, nobody over here, even people on the left, are buying into the authenticity of that kind of theatrical performance. I mean, I think the people who want to control other people, they wish the human species was less intelligent. But you know what, damn it, I am just such a fan of humanity. We are way more intelligent than what corrupt powers think we are. I think we're even more intelligent than we think we are. So we don't fall for old tricks. Like, cool, we've seen that trick for a few years, few decades, not falling for it anymore. We see it as a trick rather than a reality. So, man, authenticity is what wins out, because you actually get the person, their policies, just like you said. You don't have to ask anybody what you're allowed to think on a certain issue. You get to just share your thoughts, which is pretty damn refreshing.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I think it's kind of taken some of my competitors by surprise. Like I go out on my digital battle bus and I live stream for like an hour and 20 minutes. It's crazy, and I just answer questions and I talk. I'm doing vlogs every night. Just like I'm real, and I don't think anyone else would dream of going live because it would potentially be bad, right? They would say something wrong. I mean, how can I say something wrong if I'm being genuine about my intentions for this city? So again, I do watch what's going on sometimes in America, and it seems to be the epitome of what politics can be sometimes when it goes wrong, where there's clearly someone who's running the country that's not personally in charge. There's just, it seems like a lot of weird scripted moments. And I see it here with our current mayor as well. And then I look and people say, well, he's expected to potentially win. And I'm like, but the people are smarter than that. I know they are. And the other thing is when I go out in the streets of London, I see great people. I see people who want the best for this city. I see people who work hard, who care about their kids, I see amazing people. That's what I see. And I feel like if we are more powerful than we think we are, we're smarter than we think we are. And if there's just some leadership to bring everyone together and to do the right thing, I think you just get an amazing city and maybe an amazing country and maybe an amazing world. But if we don't do that, I don't know. I don't know what happens. I worry a little bit when we don't have great leadership.
Yeah. And I think that's a good thing to worry about. And I love that you're not someone that just sits around and only worries. You're putting your butt on the line and really doing something about it.
Yeah, well, we got 31 days left until this happens, so it's going to be pretty interesting.
Man, I'm excited. Could I ask you something? I just love to hear your quick snapshot of it. An issue that's been near and dear to my heart for, unfortunately, over a year now are the lockdowns, which after a couple weeks, to me, really seem like they are way out of proportion. We're damaging lives, not saving lives. We're causing more harm than help. And I'm curious if the election turns out the way we'd all love it to turn out in May, what's your vision of what to do about the lockdowns in London? What do you want to do?
Yeah, it's a great question. And then after I'm done, I'd love it if you could share what's happening in Texas, because you guys do things a little different, and it'd be nice to get your thoughts, to tell people here and everybody listen from the rest of the world. So look, as you know, for the last year, we've been having open and honest conversations with different people, with different perspectives about lockdown. We took a lot of heat for it, but I always thought it's better to have those conversations and have those arguments out in the open than not. I always think the solution is always more information. That's always more information, more upfront conversations. I had a reporter from the Times who did a big piece on us, 2-page spread the other day, and he said, but isn't it bad to have these ideas out there? I said, no, it's better to talk about them. And I said, and then now you know exactly how you feel about it. And you can argue your point of view and realize, well, maybe I wasn't as sure, or maybe I'm more sure. It's always good to have more ideas, in my opinion. And so, I've been critical of the lockdown for the past year. I always thought that we could have a way that really focused on protecting those that are vulnerable, but allowing those that aren't vulnerable to contribute. And we've seen in Britain here, it's been really difficult. We've been on lockdown now for the past 4 to 5 months, on a pretty extreme lockdown. And it's just now slowly opening up, we hope. Europe's kind of going back into lockdown. I know the US is kind of opening up, but we went down into heavy lockdown right around Christmas. And it's been a real struggle for a lot of people. And we've seen mental health struggle. We've seen physical health struggle, gyms being closed. We've seen the economic implications are something it's hard to quantify. But, I've had various professors on this show that have said, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of lives lost just because of poverty, for example. There's some boroughs here in London, Lewisham, I was in on Friday, 37% of the children live in poverty in London. And we're in the worst recession in 300 years. And so, again, the politicians, I didn't ever see any innovation, JP. You know, in my opinion, the CEO of a company like a Musk should innovate. Okay, we know we have this problem. Can you bring us 10 different solutions or, 20 different solutions, and let's weigh them all, but not one solution. The phrase, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so here it was just you're open or you're closed. And it's really ground down the economy here. And it's one of the reasons why getting London back to work has been my phrase for the past 5-6 months since I've been campaigning. Get London back to work. That's my primary policy. Then, 4 things Londoners care about: getting London back to work, crime on the streets, building housing, affordable housing, and our transport situation is just a mess. It's expensive to get around in London, and our transport network's going bankrupt, and people are kind of tired of it. So those are the big issues. But getting London back to work is something we've been really focused on. And now they're starting to give us dates where we can open up. But one of the biggest things I want to do is I want to hold a big event in August. It's called the Great Celebration. And London's been really good at doing big events in the past. We crushed the 2012 Olympics. And back in 1851, we had something called the Great Exhibition. It was a big, big celebration. It kind of was the beginning of what a World's Fair would be. And they brought people into London. The whole thing was actually run at a profit. It actually created our Science Museum and some of our big museums here because of the money it made. So I have a vision for the same type of event to happen in August, 31 days, street festivals during the day, music festivals at night, 20 million people coming into London to safely show the world that we're back. In some ways, the way Texas has done, to show the world that, guess what, we're back. Sure, it was a difficult year, but we've left it behind, and we're here to show the world why we think we're great. We're sure to show the world that we're back in business and we're ready to go. It's a big, almost like a big reset. So that's one of my big policies as mayor, to not just talk about it, but to show people how we're going to do it. And when I start telling people about this, JP, their eyes light up. They're thinking, yeah, this would be great. They start thinking, we'll have this band here and we'll go to this thing here. And, it's in the DNA of this city. And so, again, as mayor, that's something I can do, JP. I can say, we're going to have this celebration. Let's get everyone involved. I'll talk to everybody in the industry. We'll do free transportation for people in the city. We'll find people to get involved. It's the spark of an idea. It's innovation, it's leadership. That's something the current mayor, he's never run a business in his life. I just don't think he's got that kind of vision. So that's where a leader could make or break potentially a city, which makes or breaks this country. The GDP of this country, the tax revenues of London power almost the whole country to a certain extent. It's 25 to 50% of the tax revenues come from this city. So if we make a win, the rest of the country makes a win. So again, I want to find a way where we can safely get people back to work, but then also make sure that this becomes a massive place of industry. And so it's a great question, JP. I'm wondering, can we learn anything from what you guys have done in Texas? Because it seems to me that you guys have avoided a lot of problems that happened on the coasts.
Yeah. Well, first off, I'll say Texans are famous for loving freedom and self-responsibility, which is part of freedom. So we, as it is, there's had been, mandates from our governor way too long, way too out of proportion, in my opinion. But just last month, the governor officially lifted the mask mandates and all businesses can go at 100% capacity. And you never believe what has happened to case rates since the governor lifted the mask mandates. Case rates have done nothing but go down, not up. They've just gone down. Weird. And then I'll tell you, the freest state during this whole time in all of the U.S. hasn't been Texas, though Texas has been up there. It's been Florida.
Yeah.
I just returned home from Florida yesterday. I was there doing a weekend of shows. And, Florida, they've no mask mandates. The comedy club where I was performing, everything's open to 100% capacity, sold out shows, people in there having a great time, human connection. And of course, if someone didn't want to come to my show, guess what? It wasn't a mandated comedy show you got to go to. So maybe some people chose to stay home. I'm grateful they have that freedom of choice. But everybody who wanted to come out did, and that's what Florida's been doing. And when you look at Florida's case rates compared to the super lockdown places like California, New York, Florida's case rates are just as low, if not lower, but they're not any higher, even though Florida's been 100% open. So, Brian, I'm not a doctor. Obviously, I sometimes accidentally think for myself and start to reason, like, what might that mean, given that Florida's case rates are as low and they're open? And I start accidentally asking questions. But man, I think there's so much to learn. I mean, people are moving to Florida and moving to Texas from New York and California by the droves, because people right now, they're not voting with their votes at the ballots. They're voting with where they choose to live, work, and raise their families. And right now people are voting on freedom, and they're not getting harmed because of it. The opposite, they're flourishing with their health, their happiness, and their prosperity.
Yeah, it's been incredible to watch. And I read a whole study comparing the Florida rates to California, similar climates, but completely opposite policies when it came to masks and lockdowns, with obviously Florida pretty much allowing people to do what they want to do, and California being almost the opposite, shutting down businesses, requiring, all these other mandates. And again, Florida has probably an older population as well, like a population you think would be much more susceptible. And yet it's again, like, I'm not a scientist either, although I have studied engineering, but you see the rates and it's uncanny. Florida has been tremendously successful in doing it their way. And it makes you really ask those questions about, well, what's actually happening here. There's a guy named Professor Michael Levitt, who is a Nobel Prize winner, professor out of Stanford, who's been advising Florida. And I had him on my show last year. I actually couldn't have him live on YouTube, JP, because I thought he was going to be censored because I was being censored at the time. Now, when the lockdown began, he said that he predicted there would be about 100,000, 150,000 deaths. I think it was at the time where Imperial College London was predicting 1 to 1.5 million, at the time. And yet the guy from Imperial was featured on all of the mainstream media and on the government websites. He was listened to by the governor. And yet when I had the professor from Stanford, the Nobel Prize winner, on, I had to put him on my digital freedom platform, which we had to pay separately to live stream and to try to match the powers of the almighty alphabet, Google. And yet that guy was being censored, even though he ended up more accurately predicting what happened. He ended up advising the state of Florida on what's become an incredible test case scenario of a potentially great way of treating this. And so, again, why is ever more information bad? And I always ask the people that have censored me, and I've had some heavy conversations with mainstream media, and I've got a bunch more scheduled this week, where they come right at me for my censorship last year on my digital freedom platform. And I just say, look, here's one example where you censored someone that actually, if you would just listen to them, could have helped us out a lot. So it's a strange time we live in. And it's been great to see Florida and Texas, because you seem to, again, have shown that there are other ways. And like you said, people are moving there in droves. I mean, obviously, the UFC went to Florida. It was one of their first shows. They've now booked out, sold out Florida shows to show that they're kind of back. Obviously, famously, Joe Rogan moved out to you guys in Austin and has been very vocal of the fact that he's just loves Texas. He loves the spirit of people taking ownership of their own consequences and allowing people to do what they want to do with freedom. And the fact that he couldn't live in California. JP, I grew up in San Diego, California. I would not move back to California right now. Can't believe I'd say that. I would not move back to New York City right now. I lived in New York for 4 years. I would not move to either one. I can't believe I'm saying that. I would have never said that a couple of years ago.
Same. I lived in San Diego for 10 years myself. Wow. I love the people out there. I love the landscape, the beaches, such a beautiful spot. And I don't even want to go visit right now. And I don't like saying that, yet that's the reality relative to what it's become. And, for me, the common denominator of what's going on in our pandemic, as well as the mayor race that you're in, is what people want more than anything is freedom. you know, if people want to be scared and stay in their homes, they're free to do that. And if people want to go out to a comedy club or meet a friend for a drink or visit their grandmother, they're free to do that. And I think that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. People are so intelligent that we're human beings are intelligent enough to make the choices that they want to make. You know, we don't need, my opinion, we don't need a nanny state protecting people from themselves, because when that happens, I think what we've seen, if you look at history and what's happened the past year, you just try to protect people, and before too long, they're getting suffocated by the coffin you've put them in to protect them. So, man, as soon as we're born, we're at risk of dying. And you're either going to live in a way where you're on purpose, or you're going to live in a way where you're afraid the whole time. The choice is yours. But what we've learned this past year, what people want in London, what people want in Texas, Florida, and everywhere else, they want freedom. Like, let me live my life the way I want to live it, because I've got a God-given intelligence that courses through my being.
Yeah, you put it so simply, you know, just like a guy would in Texas. I appreciate that, JP. I mean, you know, it sounds so simple, but you're right. And I think we forgot how much we value freedom somehow over the years. Maybe we just got used to it. You know, I would have never, ever thought in a million years I would have been censored last year. I always thought that happened to the crazies and the weirdos, and then it became me, and then it became real. And then, like I said, I saw basic freedoms being taken away. I mean, I'm free right now to walk up to the top of my building and jump off the top. I'm free to buy 4 bottles of vodka and drink them until I die. I'm free to buy enough aspirin to drink. I'm free to drive a car off a cliff. But I'm not free to open up a business and feed my family. I'm not free enough to, you know, go see a friend now legally, right? And understand the risks and take those risks. I'm actually not allowed to do that. You know, I can't travel right now unless I tell the government I have a really important reason to actually leave the country. I can't actually do it. And I can't, it's hard to believe I'm even saying this stuff, isn't it? And like you said, I think we forgot that we risk our lives every single day. You know, I think when I was doing videos a few months ago, I was quoting the figures of people in car accidents was at the time was more than COVID deaths under 50. The people, you know, forget smoking related illnesses. You know, those were in the hundreds of thousands, and yet they didn't lock down tobacco stores when that was happening. So if you really care about our health, you could have saved 200,000 lives last year if you had just locked down the tobacco stores. Yes, you would have taken away one of my freedoms, but you didn't, because you realized that it was actually my choice and I could choose to live my life as I wanted. And yet this year, or whatever, in the last year, they decided that you can't do this thing over here. So, you know, sometimes you need a group of people to remind you of that. And I got to thank the Texans for that.
Yeah, well, amen. I'm glad to be here, and I mean, and you're doing that. I mean, you've got the freedom blood coursing through you, and yeah, I think, you know, I never imagined in my life that my purpose would be to crusade for freedom. Yeah, I was born in 1981. Think back to my childhood, even my early adulthood. I was like, no, like, I live in America. Like, right. The world's good. Yeah, there's a few messed up countries, but for the most part, the world is good and free. Like, the last thing we'll need to do is crusade for freedom. And man, you take away something that you've always taken for granted, freedom in my case, and it really makes me appreciate how damn important it is. I mean, freedom's everything. So, you know, that's, take it away, and that wakes up the dragon. So yeah, here we are in our lifetimes.
Yeah, and I went kind of deep on the whole freedom of speech thing last year, because when it happened to me, I started talking about it, and then I thought, you know what, I should learn more about where this came from and the tenets of it, and you know, the First Amendment, and like all these things. I started really learning about like when we finally recognized that freedom of speech was important. And I had a bunch of people on my show, and we talked all about this concept. And you know, I had some guests on that said it's not just freedom of speech, but it's actually the freedom to listen to someone as well. There's two people involved there. when you stop one of them. And what does it mean, and how all other rights really are based on that right to free speech? Because if you can't talk about something, then how can there be these other rights? And it makes you go deep and ask these heavy questions about what's really important. And then when we see then the digital networks too, where we communicate, and then we see just all sorts of strange things happen. And that's why I appreciate a lot of the videos you put out there. And like you said, JP, who would have thunk that your life's purpose would have been defending freedom through a unique way that, quite honestly, JP, only you can do. Let's be honest, right? There's nobody out there competing for you, for your space, JP. And I appreciate that about you, man. You're really unique. And you have a way of kind of sliding under not only the AI sensors, but some of also the human sensors, to where your blend of comedy and logic, or lack thereof, makes the point somehow in a really resonating way. So yeah, it's been great to see what you're doing.
Well, thank you for seeing it that way, Brian. That's the intention, and I'm grateful that I'm dysfunctional enough as a person that comedy is my vocation of choice. There is something something interesting that happens when you speak a message directly and literally to a person that contradicts their current paradigm. The human ego, it's predictable. It just wants to defend. Like, nope, I'm not going to consider that. It doesn't want anything to change. That's human nature. And of course, those who learn, they're willing to work through that. But the ego gets pretty defensive. But with that same message spoken not directly, but more packaged through the language of playfulness to the ego, it doesn't look like there's anything to defend against, because it's playfulness. Like, that's the one thing you don't have to defend against. So I think just via that nature, a lot of times the messages, and people share this with me, they'll get into their mind and their heart for consideration. Whereas, if someone's just screaming on the street corner, proselytizing to you, like, hey, I stop listening before I even understand what they're saying. So right. Yeah, man, I'm grateful that I'm able to share what I do, the comedy, and to have so many beautiful people around the world of all shapes and sizes want to listen and value what I do. I'm very honored.
I mean, so that's the essence of comedy, right? You've gone deep on this as well, right? You must have started off thinking, I like being funny, but then and people resonate with it. But then you've obviously gone kind of deep on it yourself, right? And saying, well, why is this working? And why are people doing this, right? I mean, you have done some work on this.
Yeah, certainly. Like you mentioned, the comedy starts off with, let's just make people laugh. And then as I grow and mature as a person, it's like, no, making people laugh is secondary. The primary purpose is to help them in some way, deliver a message for consideration, not to brainwash people. I want people to think my way. I want people to think in a bigger way than they currently are. So it becomes where comedy is just the vehicle to deliver something far more important than just comedy. And yeah, that's what I've realized along the way. And yeah, I love using it. I mean, comedy just for the sake of making someone laugh, I think that's worth it. We all need more laughter, but I like to package it with something that I consider even more important than comedy, and that's a message to help people embrace their heart and be true to themselves.
And some of the great comedians are known that way because they were creating some of the most poignant observations that connected with people, right? I mean, Carlin and all of these greats, I mean, they got people to maybe really think about the lives they were living, the governments they were in, right? The freedoms or lack thereof, the stories they were being told about their religions, their place in society, right? All of those things are being groundbreakingly questioned by comedians, So you guys do some great stuff. And like you said, also laughter is a wonderful thing, but then also it can take it to other levels where I guess you kind of get around that ego piece and get people to really consider another point of view. And hopefully we all kind of evolve that way, I think is the point.
Hopefully. Yeah. Well, I think we're doing it.
I think so too, man. You got me thinking I gotta get some comedy in my act. Because I don't have a comedic bone in my body. I mean, like I laugh and stuff, but like, and I'm kind of funny with my kids, but you know, when I have a point in my view, I always go, I try to go through the front door, JP, which is why I need more people like you around me. Because like, I go through the front door, let me tell you exactly, I think this is the way, we got to do it this way. But I mean, you know, having that conversation, that comedic conversation is an important thing. So, yeah, I appreciate you doing that, man. It's important. And like, it seems like your work is more important now than ever based on what's going on with you and the channel. And it sounds like your stand-up and your shows are getting even more popular. So look, man, congrats on all your success so far, and I'm wishing you more. And I want to come see you in Austin as well. So
Thank you, Brian. Man, I want you to come see me in Austin as well. So can't wait to have you here, brother. And I so appreciate your kind words. And I know where our paths look, the texture of our paths look a little bit different, but I know our paths lead up the same mountain of ultimately helping and serve the people in our spheres. So it's such a pleasure to be serving that same purpose with you, brother. And I'm so stoked for the election coming up. What you're doing is groundbreaking. I wish and hope, and I see realistically so much success, so much cause for optimism about the election. So, man, you've got a lot of fans over here in the U.S., I can tell you that.
thank you, man. I really appreciate it. And I've got a big job of service to do when I get into this office, that's for sure. And it's probably taken me a few months to process like the amount of work that needs to be done for this city. And it's been humbling, but I quite honestly, JP, it's made me really ask myself, like, are you here to serve? And you know, that for the last 10 years with London Real, I had to have those conversations a bunch of times because like for a long time, it wasn't obvious what I was doing here, right? And so it's like, it makes you ask yourself, is this about you or is this about the service? Is this about you or is this about the service? And London Real asked me that question many, many times and got me to where I was. And then this is another level because it's like, you know what? You potentially got 9.5 million people's problems to solve. And they're big problems and you need to go all in and solve them. And so it's a big, heavy job, but it's one that is almost the ultimate in service. So it's honestly made me a different person running this race. And it's made me really ask those hard questions. Like, is that what this is really about for you, Brian? And then every day we show up and we say yes, and then we just go all in. So it's been crazy. The stuff we do here is crazy. The hours are crazy and the interactions are crazy. And I mean, like I said, getting arrested by the police and all this stuff, it's just been a crazy ride, man. And like, again, your friends and your family all go through roller coasters emotionally. But it's been a massive growing experience. And sometimes the universe like actually grabs me and shakes me and says, is this really about service? Well, guess what? We're going to find out today, Brian. It's going to stick something big in front of you. And you have to make those right choices, because if it's about you, I would have stopped this a long time ago and gone back to my YouTube channel. That's easier, that's for sure. So, but also there's something great about serving at that level, and you feel it too when you do your shows and you do your videos, because you feel that energy coming back of people appreciating you, and that's why we're all here, I think, ultimately. So, so yeah, man, it's been great. I love talking to you. Like I said, I don't get many of these conversations, strangely enough, in what we do out there. So, dude, thanks for the time. Thanks for reaching out to me and having me on your show. It's been great getting to know you, and I'm a massive fan. I can't wait to come see you. And then you need to get to London as well, so you can sit in the leather chair and we can go deep on you as well.
Man, I would love that, Brian. Thank you for all that you're doing. And if you get into office, if you need a chief comedy officer over in London, I'll be over.
I think we very well might. I think we very well might need that. I seriously do. I think, you know, I'm going to bring Kennedy over. I'm going to bring Wim Hof over. I'm going to bring Goggins over. I really would like to get a lot of these ideas out to the city of London. I really do. I've got big ideas on how we can just take the whole mindset of this place to the next level. Really do. So careful what you wish for.
Awesome, Brian. Man, thank you for taking the time and having me on. This is such a joy.
No, it's awesome stuff. All right, brother, stay well. Keep doing what you're doing. We appreciate you over here in London. Thank you, man.
Thank you, Brian. Much love, brother.